Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Beaufort County Transportation Committee meeting of March 2024. Will we have roll call, please?
Chairman Craig Gordon.
Here.
Vice Chairman Arthur Hammond.
Here.
Jim Beaufort.
Here.
Clarence Daniel. Craig Forrest.
Here.
Virginia Kozak.
Here.
Paul Manning.
Here.
Charles Perry.
He's excused.
John Burrell.
Here.
Brian Winslow.
Brian is no longer on the committee. We have a quorum. Brian, I'm going to turn to you and let you introduce Chris for us.
Thank you, Chairman Gordon. So wanted to introduce Chris to Julio Cook, who is going to be facilitating the meeting today. She is our new business manager in the engineering department. So Chris comes to us from the planning department, where she spent the last 3 years helping with the financial roles over there. She has experience running several committees and council commissions. So we are happy to have her on the board and helping out. And I think she's going to be a great addition. So thank you, Chris, and welcome.
Welcome aboard. Thank you. Welcome. It's also customary to go around the room and do introductions. So Chris, we'll start with you and go around the room to the opposite side.
Mr. Julio Cook. I'm the new business manager over in engineering.
And Maria Kaepernick, Common Council District 6, liaison to Business Meeting. Paula Brown, County Council District 8.
Rusty Brown's Transportation. Ron Bauer, Transportation Construction Manager. Richard Turner with AFT Engineering.
Mike Healy, SCDOT, RV Jasper Maintenance.
Elizabeth Sanders, SCDOT, Future Maintenance.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody being here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Is there anybody here that desires to make public comment on our agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on. The next item is approval of minutes for January the 17th, 2024. They've been distributed to you. Are there any objections or corrections? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The next item is old business. Neva didn't make it today. Did she update us?
We have US 17, they have paved and performed pulled up patching on that contract. Next one. 129, Allen's Causeway, also signs are uncovered, so great time for us on maintenance. But that is underway, that will be starting soon as well. It's not been provided yet, but we've never moved in that right direction. Completed roads. Let's see, we have Boundary Street, Heritage.
David, how mine shows if you wanted to come around and look at my screen so you can actually see the street. Because mine's not cut off.
Okay, yes,
Where is it? It's in the package.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the slides are in the package.
yeah, no, you're good.
Okay.
Sea Island Parkway, New Street, Scott Street, E Street was removed from this.
Full depth.
So I'm not sure why that's showing on there. But E Street was removed because of the drainage improvement project in the city of Beaufort. So that one should be removed from there. But Lodmere Street, Palmetto Street, Spectacle Street, Live Oak, and Sand Hills is in Jasper. So that is also, Live Oak and Sand Hills can be removed from that list as well. 2024. Holly Hall, I've also seen pulled up patch marked down on this road, so it's imminent as well. It's connected with Allen's Causeway and another project, Land's End. They're all together, so they're any day we should hear from the contractor on when those are going to get started. Sidewalk and crosswalk being added. This is on Newcastle. This is on US 21 Business in Newcastle, next to the USCD apartments. Looks like a new crosswalk will be installed for that intersection. And then we have a lot of pavement markings going on. You should see a lot of improvements with markings in our county. We have multiple contracts coming up, not just this one. It's not from maintenance side, we're excited for that. So these are all individual routes, but that is very detailed.
That's everything from center lines to,
Yeah, all markings. Yeah, center lines, edge of pavements. It could be arrows, crosswalks, stop bars, as much as we can get done with the funding. Anything found deficient or we're trying to get in a more substantial and concrete 6-year cycle of pavement markings. So this is a big push to get us towards that.
okay, good.
Yeah. Oh, okay, great. And that's all we have for the updates.
Thank you. Appreciate your help. Okay, dirt road project, Rusty, you're up.
Thank you, Chairman, Council, I hope you're all well. Just a quick update on a few roads. Dirt Road 53, Rainbow Road is complete. Twickenham will start after Northview is finished. Northview Road is in the process right now and is expected to complete around the end of April. Dirt Road 54, Francis Jones Church Road and School Road, all these roads are complete. Dirt Road 55, this one, Mr. Glover had asked about James D. Washington a few meetings back, along with Leo Green, Dolphin Watch. These roads are out for bid now, and these bids are due March 21st.
55 is due March
March 21st.
March 21st.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Go on to this, the year 6 resurfacing. These roads
Are
are
there any
complete.
questions on dirt
Oh,
road
I'm sorry.
paving? Okay,
Sorry
let's
about
move
that.
on to resurfacing.
Resurfacing, these roads are complete. We're working with the contractor to finish the punch list. Benton Field, Public Works is going to be paying $32,000 towards that project.
Yeah, that was something, thank you for bringing it up. That's near and dear to my heart. Public Works is donating $32,000 towards the paving costs for Benton Field because it hadn't been taken care of by them. And we also, that last meeting, we gave a letter of appreciation to the concrete company that provided all the concrete to fix the roads and approaches and so on with it. So, good job.
Thank you. We'll move on to some of the other preservation. Year 6 preservation. These roads are complete as well. We're working with the contractor to complete those punch lists. Year 6 rejuvenator, all those roads are complete.
What about year 7?
Year 7, the resurfacing, we have a PO we have a PO and the pre-construction meeting set for March 18th.
I'm gonna, you got the dollars there. We were talking about this earlier, so you have the slides to look at. It was about, all told, by $6 million, is that around 6 million, Brian, total
Yeah,
for?
I think it was actually about 5, I have it here. Total for this year's program is right under 5, it's about 4.9.
Year 7, so,
Year 7.
Year 7 preservation, we have a pre-construction meeting scheduled for March 14th. I do not have a start date on that yet. And then Year 7 rejuvenator, we had the pre-construction meeting on March 5th. The expected start date on that is April 1st, and we're looking at 7 to 10 days to complete that project.
Good.
Next slide is the Year 7 contracts.
5.1 million.
I'm sorry, that 5.1 includes the patching on Buffalo Parkway, that's where the difference is.
That's all I have right now.
Is there a plan to look at that 7-year program and say that bought us so many years and what that deferred as far as not having to do the big fix sooner? You know, basically the cost benefit analysis.
Yeah, and when they come up with these pavement plans, they look at it, and I mean, each of these different treatments is going to have an extended life expectancy. I mean, microsurfacing, which we're doing a lot of, is generally 5 to 7 years life expectancy. The rejuvenator, which we do every year, generally adds about 3 to 5 years. So each of these different treatments has an accepted extension of life to it. But that is part of when they're doing pavement preservation plans, that goes into the calculation. And eventually there will need to be a large-scale reconstruction. With low-volume roads, we can extend the life a good bit, but like on Bluffton Parkway, where we're going through patching now, one thing that we have asked Richard and his group to do when they looked at it was come up with some sort of preservation plan for Bluffton Parkway and Buckwalter. And I think we came up with kind of a 10-year kind of plan from a fully new resurface to after X amount of years, look at doing this, and then after X amount more, do this. So
Yeah.
we're kind of looking at some of that. Yes, sir.
I mean, I understand the expectation. I guess the question is, now that we've done it, is there going to be an attempt to say, we did this, we spent this much money over this period of time, and as a result, we think we've saved,
We did,
Yeah.
to help you, to give you the history.
right.
The plan is set up to do a 5-year plan. At the end of 4 years, we hire an engineering firm. And so last year, or at year 4, F&ME did that evaluation
Okay.
of what we had done in the previous years. We'll do the same at year 8 to year 9, whenever we hire an engineering firm again to do our next 5-year program. That way we will have somebody taking a look at what we're doing to make certain. And I think what we're saying is that the life expectancies of the roads are nominal based upon the type of traffic, or type of rejuvenator or type of product we're using on it. And that life expectancy is basically tied into the ADT, how much volume of traffic it's getting. So some of the lower volume roads, stuff we're doing could last 15 or more years. But some of the higher traffic roads, we put microsurface on Bluffton Parkway, and portions of Bluffton Parkway, I'm sure it extended the life more than 5 years on it. But the section that failed on Bluffton Parkway was the section that was the first that was built. It had exceeded its life expectancy with volume of traffic and everything by 5 to 7 years. I mean, it wore out ahead of schedule, just is the right way to describe it. But the traffic volume got there faster than what was anticipated as well. So yes, we will look at it when we hire an engineer to do our next 5-year program, to look back to see all the things we're doing. But all the things we're doing are state approved. So we're not out there in left field. The only thing that we're doing a little bit different is rejuvenator, and they've started to come around on rejuvenator as well, the rectal mine. So
And I'll say to
it's a
support-
different story.
Yeah, to support what you're saying, we've looked at some of that data initially. We've only gone through one cycle, 2 collections, and we've looked at, what roads have been treated what the increase in their PQI was compared to the roads that nothing was done. But the more cycles you go through and the longer you have to collect data, the better conclusions you can draw. So with only having 2 collections, I mean, we can draw some beginning conclusions, but with each subsequent collection, we'll get more and be able to draw better conclusions.
Super, thank you.
I see, I think we're done. We'll
Thank you,
move
sir.
Brian in now.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
is that mic at the dais, can it be hot? I'm really having a hard time hearing the presentations.
okay, check.
Can you hear me? Is that better?
I can, but, maybe it's my age.
I'm a little bit younger than you and I can't hear.
But
I have good hearing.
I'll try to be a little bit louder.
Okay.
All right, so I guess next is Jared's updates, which he was unavailable to make it, so he asked me to fill in today, so I will do my best. The first one is the Triangle and the 170 short-term projects. There's not much to update on the Triangle, but on the 170 short-term, the resurfacing and the thermoplastic striping is complete at Argent Road and 462. At Argent, there's been some, we made a dual lefts turning left on the 170. A lot of people still don't know that's dual left, so we are going to add some additional signage to visually show that. So hopefully it will continue to increase with the better traffic flow. We have also has the same consultant to look at the timings of those 2 signals to see if there's anything we can do to reduce congestion further. On the signal at Oldfield, we're working with the DOT in Hardyville right now to work through getting permits so we can get that installed. Moving on to further down, the 170, 278 interchange, pipe and boxes is supposed to be getting delivered later on this week. And then hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll see dirt moving out there and them getting to work. And then with the goal is to start paving on 278 in May. So that's the short-term 170 projects. And then, was there any questions about those? Yes, sir.
Brian, is there any chance that a presentation could be made to the Sun City folks? I keep getting asked about the 170 project, especially as it relates to, what's that, Oldfield Boulevard or whatever, that
Oldfield.
particular end of
Yeah.
it. I mean, there is a lot of concern about what's happening on that section of road, and, I have the plans, but I don't know if they're still current or whatever. So it seems to me that if we could do something that would be suited for Sun City to let people know what that section at the interchange and what's gonna happen there, and also the turnarounds or whatever, I think would really be beneficial.
Okay.
Turn it to you. Please.
So just so you know, Sun City Low Country Happenings has had Jared speak. North Currents has had Jared speak. Other groups have had Jared speak on the 170 Triangle. He's shown all of it. And we have Mr. Gordon coming in this month.
Next month,
Next
April.
month. Yeah, this month is Tanya. We have him coming next month. But also, all those presentations are on YouTube.
Right.
So every time somebody asks me, I send them to YouTube.
I will send them there.
Because Jared's on there with his smiley face.
Thank you.
Yep, send them to you.
And then the next one is the 278 corridor, and I spoke to Jared about that one earlier, and as of now, it sounds like we're still in a holding pattern with no new updates on that one, so, yes, sir.
Yes,
I have promised in the past not to ask any questions, but I can't let this continue to go. I mean, it's getting totally ridiculous. What's happening to these milestones? I thought January the 31st was some kind of drop dead date or whatever. I mean, what's going on? I mean, what are we waiting for? And if we're waiting for the town to decide what to do, what are they looking for?
Yeah, I don't have the answers for that. I will ask and see. But like I said, when I asked earlier, I was told there's no new updates, but I'll make sure to get with Jared and get you the most up-to-date information that we have.
Are we gonna build it?
Maybe. We can answer that if you want.
please.
They had a drop dead date of January 31.
That's what I thought.
It went to heaven. It didn't happen. They're waiting for their independent study, which rumor is it's going to be April, May. a hard May. That's where it is right now. That's what we've been
We're
told.
waiting for their independent stuff.
Well, which one are we waiting for? The first one, the second one, the third one?
I think
Or when are we gonna get to the
they're-
fourth one?
Yeah.
I think this is the fourth.
The town council has stalled it, waiting for their study.
What are they looking for in the study? That's my whole point. I mean, they've had 3 studies already.
Well,
I didn't realize that.
yeah.
I thought it was just the first one.
I mean, does anybody know?
I think Jared talked to us about Stony Creek is one of the issues, but do they know? I don't know. I've listened to every one of their council meetings.
Does anybody know what the State Infrastructure Bank is thinking? Or what's the department thinking?
Well, there are usually dates on when funding, I mean, I just know about the $1 million that LATS loaned Beaufort County, and there is a deadline, I can't remember what it is. And if the county hasn't found all the other financing and settled the whole bridge thing, then
I
they
mean,
will owe LATS $1 million.
we asked the department to hold up their bridge project. That's the only thing. I keep laughing when I hear SCDOT's project. No, that's what we asked them to do.
Right.
I mean,
That's the best I can tell you where we are right now.
maybe I'm
Craig.
wrong about the role of the Beaufort County Transportation Committee. I think we should be knowing what the heck's going on.
Greg, all I can simply say is, I have these scheduled for information for us, to try to keep us with the latest information that's available. And that's the only role that we have in it at this juncture.
I happen to disagree, but that's okay.
That's your prerogative. Okay,
But I'll make sure that we do get you the most up-to-date information when I see Jared, so.
item
I'll
C,
promise again not to bring it up anymore. I mean, I promised 3 times, okay. I'll promise the 4th time.
item number 6, new business.
Good thing I'm still not the commissioner.
Jordy Madliner III Bridge signage. I included in your packets, I received a letter from the delegation. The delegation had voted to put a sign up to commemorate this individual's contributions he's made to a section of Beaufort County. And essentially, we're being told to spend $500 on signs. So I need a motion to approve the sign.
Motion.
Do I have a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Got a question? Mr.
Yes.
Chairman? Is this coming out of the C fund?
Yes, it is.
Is that I'm new at this sort of, is that an eligible expense for?
It is.
How about for other signs?
It is. We've done it before.
Thank you.
Well, I've been here a long time and active in all these things, and I never heard of this gentleman. Not that we shouldn't fund it, but I was just wondering if we could know.
You know, I have the full document that went to the House and everything else, and they don't tell us a thing.
Oh,
I'll read the resolution. To request the Department of Transportation name the new Harbor Island Bridge in Beaufort County, the Jordy Madliner III Bridge, and erect appropriate markers or signs at the bridge containing these words. Whereas Mr. Jordy is a Beaufort County native who is a devoted husband and father who enjoys fishing, boating, shrimping, and is a community volunteer. And whereas he is a dedicated state employee involved in the development of sea islands in a manner that balances the needs of their citizens, ecosystems, and sea life. And whereas the new Harbor Island Bridge in Beaufort County is nearing its completion, and it would be fitting and proper to name it in honor of him. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives, the Senate concurring, that the members of the South Carolina General Assembly request the Bridge of Department of Transportation named the new Harbor Island Bridge in Beaufort County and erect appropriate markers or signs at the bridge containing these words.
thank you. I just thought it kind of odd that somebody that I have never heard of.
We had one about 4 years ago where a lady that was killed, that owned a business, at the corner of Beaufort County and Jasper County.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And we named a bridge for her too. So they did the same thing. They sent it to DOT and DOT says to us, it says pay for it. So I've signed it and we'll pay for $500.
Well, that's a state law that they, for the pay. I mean, you don't really have a choice if you
Yep.
want it.
Correct. Okay. Next item, Mr. Turner, you're up for pavement preservation plan.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank y'all for having me here today. Brian and I have been working on the pavement management plan for several months now. He asked me to help produce this last year, and so we've been working together to produce a manual on, and really, the manual, it's a guideline. It's gonna, how do you go about your pavement management program? And so it's simply, it's a document, and I'll read this to you. Document the criteria, procedures to best equip Beaufort County with the tools to optimize the use of public dollars to maintain improve the quality of the roadway system. It's essentially documenting what you guys have all been working toward as the CTC for a number of years now. So kudos to you guys. From my perspective, and looking at from my past experience, Beaufort County you guys have done a very good job. And so, so this is kind of documenting some of the things you have done or how you've gone about them in the past and how you can move things forward. What's included here is really looking at the road inventory and doing a pavement condition survey, what that should look like, what should be included in the road inventory, what data you should be collecting on the roads, an annual work cycle. What do you do on an annual basis? There are a lot of different parts that Brian and his team does and on an annual basis to develop the plans, implement the plans, and then capture the impacts of those plans, which is kind of getting to what, Mr. Manning, what you were saying, what are the impacts and how do we track that and how do we gauge, how good are we doing? And I'll talk a little bit more about that and how that can be done. Network analysis is looking at your network of roads and what, like I said, what impacts have been made by the implementation of those plans. And a budget analysis, how's the best way to use those funds? The mix of, we talked about preservation, reconstruction, and rehabilitation of roads. What's the best use or best mix of those funds to improve your overall network health? And that's going to be that's kind of my challenge to you guys, is looking at the overall network health, not necessarily focusing on a single road or a single group of the worst roads in the county. It's how do we improve the overall network, and that's really what this document is based upon. And then project selection, and then what treatment types and some selection matrices or decision trees to kind of guide how you arrive at, this is the type of treatment you'll do on this type of road based on the conditions that you see. And then some of the annual maintenance items that the Public Works Department that could be handling that would help maintain your roads. Water, what's probably water, what's the three, best things you can keep out of your road, and it's water. So the drainage is vitally important to the success and to the maintenance of roads. So moving on to the next slide. So talk about road inventory and pavement condition surveys. So, and that's really, so your first step here is you got to know what you have. You got to know, well, what is considered your network? Is it the state roads? Is it the city of Beaufort roads, Hilton Head? Is it all of those combined? So there's different ways of going about it, and you can have subsets, but it's really understanding, at the end of the day, it's understanding exactly what is your network that you're looking at and you're considering here. And then it's doing a pavement condition survey to understand what is the condition of that network of roads. That's your baseline. You got to have that to understand how good are you doing down the line. So you create a ranking system to prioritize needs. That's one of the goals of this, is how do you decide on which roads? How do you rank those roads? Developing a summary of the overall condition. Let's go back to what I was saying, the overall network health or overall condition of the system. Developing a uniform rating system so that each road is looked upon in the same manner, and you have essentially the same scoring guidelines for each of those roads. Creating a baseline of the pavement condition to compare future conditions and understand the rate of deterioration. And kind of say that twice, to compare future conditions and understand the rate of deterioration. So there's a lot there in what Brian was talking about, kind of long-term, understanding that rate of deterioration. You need a longer time frame and to understand how impactful and how quickly do things deteriorate once you do a treatment of whether it's rehabilitation or preservation, how long. You know, we've got a lot of industry standards that you heard Brian talk about, and those are what we plug in when we do an analysis and we say, okay, this is the life extension benefits or the impacts of the implementation of last year's plan. This is what it did to the overall network health. It improved the rating of that particular road to this point. And that's part of something I'll dig into a little bit more as well. And so it's a historical record of performance. So you're understanding what you did and you're able to bring that. And I talk about this. This is really what you need to have here is kind of a database of these roads and your network. So talk about pavement condition survey and collecting all this data, but you have to store this data somewhere so you can have this. A lot of ways of doing that, from Excel spreadsheets to pavement condition to software, payment management software. There's a lot of different types out there so there's multiple ways of doing that, but really at the end of it, you need to have a system that can help you take in this data and manage that data and make decisions upon and then measure the impacts of your actions. So moving on to the road inventory and pavement condition survey. So I won't read all of these, but there's a lot of important ones here as it relates to what data you should collect. Segment ID is simply just a unique identifier for that section of road that'll be consistent throughout all of the documents. Road name, route number. If it's a DOT route, you'd have a route number associated with it. Political jurisdiction and maintenance jurisdiction, two different things. You can have a state road, obviously, in multiple municipalities. So defining those and where those begin and end can be important. A lot of this I'll look at from how do we report out to you guys? How do we report out to county council or some of the city council members that may be asking questions? If you build your data set or build your fields based on what you expect your output needs to be to your customers, then that's, you're building a system there and you're building a data set that you can easily go in and, hey, here's what we did in year 3 or year 4. Yes, sir.
I don't see you skipped over the one I'm most interested in.
Which one is that?
But the functional classification, is that the federal functional classification?
It is.
And how much weight does that carry?
That's dependent upon how and I'll dive into that a little bit more. But functional class, how I've used it in the past, you typically don't provide a functional classification unless it's a federal road. But however, when you get into urban and rural local roads, you can use that classification if you don't have, say, ADT information. If we don't collect that traffic data on all routes, you can use that as a way to kind of prioritize that road based on its functional class. So if you an urban arterial is going to be at a higher importance. It creates almost say an importance factor for that road based on the use of that road. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I just want to know is it the federal classification?
Yes, I would use the functional classification.
What impact it has on the final decisions?
It has very little on county roads.
I understand that.
And on the state.
Greg, you know where I'm going with this thing. I mean,
state routes, it is looked at, but we didn't look at it on state secondaries because we're looking at the smaller ADT from 2,000 and 500, so they're not relevant.
So you're on the state roads, state secondary system, you're not looking at the federal functional classification?
No, because the volume of traffic we're looking at primarily are neighborhood roads and very small streets with 500 ADT and less, or 2,000 ADT. There's lots of roads that hit the higher criteria of 2,000 and above where that would be relevant, but we're not touching them.
But from my particular perspective on the state system, that may be one of the most important things you look at.
On the state system, yes, not on the county or not in our world, so to speak. It's not relevant.
But again, I think you said on the secondary system, we're not looking at it.
Correct.
So only on the state primary system are we looking at the federal functional.
We're not paying.
But all I'm saying, well, why is this listed then?
I listed as an option for you to use it, because it is good to have that, I understand the use of that road. Whether you use it for anything that's kind of up to you. Yes, sir.
And I'd add, like, this guide, this manual that we created is mainly to guide our data collection and evaluation prioritization of county roads. This is not what we're using for the DOT system. This is mainly for county roads. And this is, you know, what to include here. I believe a lot of that is for informational purposes. So like you said, you're creating a historical database of what the road is, like what has been done to it in the past. So you have that history there. But yeah, this is mainly for county roads in the system.
But on the states, I'm going to shut up after that. On the state system, on the secondary system, if it's not an arterial or collector, it's residential. And when you see residential that's on a state road, doesn't that tell you something?
Tells me low volume.
Yeah. It tells you low volume, and it
Tells
tells, it definitely ties into the fact, Jenny has even made note of it. That's, whenever we did the analysis and had all our roads analyzed, it was shocking to see the number of roads with 582 or less. I mean, that's why the committee made the decision to take from 2,000 and less, and we're not dealing with. The maintenance people are looking at those type criteria whenever they're selecting their routes. We're not looking at it. So if you want to draw a line through that, just make that go away, make it simple.
No, I don't want to make it go away. I want to make it important.
It's not going to be important on our road. Yes,
I'm
Mary?
not gonna continue his, I mean,
It's
it's
okay if you did.
basically related. But, is there going to be a weighting for each of these? I mean, some of the characteristics, like segment ID, that probably wouldn't have too much weight. But some of the decision-making items here some are more important than others. And I always look back on something, I don't know if you knew Mike Sullivan at SCDOT some years ago, but anyhow, he and I did this wonderful matrix to determine LATs and COG projects.
Okay.
And we weighted everything, and it made things a lot more bearable for people if we could say, well, you know, this was more important. And we also looked at land uses, because again, we were thinking of the future when we were doing this matrix. And we were looking at, okay, if there's commercial development going to be on that corner starting in 6 months, that's going to have a different sort of impact than if everything is residential or vice versa.
Right.
So I was just wondering if you are going to be doing anything like that, both waiting and looking at future land uses, because that truly, you know, impacts the condition of pavement.
That was looked at whenever we did our, and I made a note to talk about this because it's quite interesting. Other than Craig, we're standing on the shoulders of committee members that have been sitting here for a long time, because we started this in 2017 and their second review was 2021. And so the data that we plugged into the analysis we'll plug into again whenever we get to 2 years from now, when we reanalyze the roads again. So this was done basically, as Richard stated, we're started this in 2017. We're far ahead of where it is today. We're one of the few counties in the state that even has a road program, anything close to this. So the people that were sitting here in these chairs and helped start this program in 2017, we're standing on their shoulders today because they did a great job starting it, and we're continuing it on.
Yeah, I just, you know, having gone through the exercise for projects that were like widenings and things like that. I just am always interested in if we can add some other criteria that do really impact pavement condition. I mean, it doesn't seem like it, but it really does.
Yeah, so far, and I envision this being a living document that's updated as time goes on. So far, when we have done our pavement evaluations, we've used the ASTM 6433, and I don't want to speak for Richard, he might be getting into some of this, to determine how we rate the pavement and the distresses we record. And that comes up to and gives us, you know, a PQI or PCR, I'm sorry, the DOT uses PQI. And that gives us a score. And then we are using our ADT to kind of prioritize and determine a treatment. And that's where in the decision trees that we asked Richard to come up with, he's looking at the distresses that are present, the condition of the road, and the ADT to determine the treatment options. Again, you know, I see this being a living document, but I will say from our perspective, we come up with a 5-year plan. And then as we're going through this plan, each year's plan gets reevaluated yearly to look at roads, make sure nothing's changed, make sure everything is still applicable. So if we know that something is coming up on a road, like a development or something, we may look at it, or we may, you know, push it down till when the development actually happens, because we don't want to resurface a road that's going to have a Walmart built right next to it, and then you're going to have, you know, construction traffic that's going to destroy the road prematurely. So as we're going through those annual revisions, we do look at some of that stuff on things that we are aware of that are going to be occurring. So in the actual prioritization and treatment selection, we're not looking at that. We're looking at ADT, distresses, and things like that. But during the annual reviews, we do look a little bit into some of that. So does that answer your question?
Sort of.
Okay.
But I guess because I'm a planner, I'm always thinking ahead. I mean, I'm aware of present conditions, whatever they are, economic or otherwise.
And I would get into, you know, this is looking at the current condition of the roads. I don't want to say it's maintenance, but it's more of preservation and resurfacing. It's not future planning, but we do take into consideration some of that when we are going through and annually reviewing these before we actually put it out to bid, so.
Then, of course, we could have another criteria that I would love to have here is the effect of Google Maps on pavement conditions. I happen to be living in the neighborhood that's getting a huge amount of the bridge changes, just because my street shows up as the quickest way to get from the bridge to the hospital.
Yeah, and we do look at ADT, and I would say there's a lot of different ways to do these pavement evaluations and treatment selections. And the overall, and I guess I could have got up and said this first, but the overall goal and why we asked Richard to do this was so we're following a consistent policy year after year when we do these evaluations to get to what Mr. Manning was asking about. If we're doing evaluations and data collection every 4 years, but we're collecting it differently every time, we can't build good conclusions or good trends. So this is kind of to make sure we are following a, you know, set guideline each time, and whether, you know, it's using ASTM time after time, or whether it's using PQI, that we're following that, we're selecting treatments the same way, and so we can start to build those longer trends and conclusions.
We also want to compare apples and apples.
Yes.
Not 1 year oranges, the next year grapefruit, and
Exactly, and so that's what the goal of this is. It's not a future planning document. It's just to make sure we're repeating the same process.
thank you.
Brian?
In 2 years, I'll ask the same question.
So, any more? All right. So, kind of looking at now at some frequency and guidelines of when you would, and some general guidelines. Frequency, I'd recommend it every 3 years. After 3 years, you start to see every 3 years for your payment condition surveys. After 3 years, you start to see your data is not exactly the most accurate. It doesn't always accurately depict what is happening at that time. So it becomes less and less reliable, obviously, the longer or the older the data is. I recommend rating the full pavement width of the lane that you're traveling in on a continuous basis, not just taking samples along the way. And obviously, bridge decks, when you come across a concrete bridge deck, that shouldn't play a factor into the condition of the rest of the roadway, or the condition of the rest of the pavement.
It's like the distresses that you would typically collect, obviously, the most impactful is cracking, like alligator cracking and rutting, probably the two largest things you'll see that have to be full depth patched, or take on the heavier repairs than some of the other minor cracking and surface texture wearing. You need to quantify those distresses as well, and how big of an area, how long are the cracks, how big are the areas that need to be patched that are failing from, say, alligator cracking, and then what is the severity of those distresses? Is it a low, moderate, high? Are the cracks really wide? Are they very narrow cracks that can be quarter inch or half inch cracks that can be filled with a crack seal treatment? Those are the things that you would need to understand to be able to decide what's the best treatment for that road. So, any questions there before I move on to pavement management work cycle? So pavement management, it is continuous. It's a process, annual process that we go through. And so I've kind of got to show I've got dates set there, and I base those on kind of when do we get to pave? And typically March to November is about our paving season. We're a little bit longer, and fortunately in our southern atmosphere, we're able to pave a little bit earlier and a little bit longer than some of our states to the north. So think about that. March to November is about the timeline that you would be doing your project. So then after that's over, then you need to understand what happened. What impact did those plans implement? So after your paving is done, you begin to update your system with the construction history. It also is time you need to update any changes that have been made in your network to make sure did you add roads? Did the dirt road program, have you paved 3 or 4 roads in the past year that now need to be added to the paved road system that weren't there before? Update those, make sure you've done an assessment on those so you have that same consistent baseline to start with.
Richard?
Yes, sir.
It's not very often where you and I have a disagreement, but I have a disagreement on this cycle for one reason and one reason only.
Okay.
We're tied into that annual basis, the DOT, so that our work years have to be done by July 1. And so we back our schedule based upon the completion because of the state budget where we have to have our money spent by. So that throws a skew to this completely.
Still the cycle of the operation, not necessarily the dates.
Correct. I agree with that.
Yeah, that was really what I was trying to key in on is what needs to happen. You can shift the dates throughout the year to meet that 100% spent of your CTC dollars.
Yep.
That compresses that schedule, compresses that completed project schedule, and maybe compresses some of the others to make sure you're prepared in, say, December, your advertising projects, or so that you're a little bit further ahead, so you take advantage of the full, I'll say, March through July or March through June paving season to meet that criteria. But the biggest thing is make sure you go through, you update your database, update the data set with what has happened during that paving cycle. And then you analyze your network health and you understand what impacts did that have on the overall network health. And then once again, you're looking at how do we fund, or how do we utilize our funds for the next year? So you're going through the funding scenarios to optimize that, to make sure that you do the best you can with what dollars you have available. And probably one of the very important pieces of that, and especially the last couple of years, is reviewing your construction cost. They've dramatically increased in the last 3 to 4 years. And so that is a significant step that you'll need to go through to understand what are the unit rates look like today. And last year's rates aren't always the best example, unfortunately. It seems to be such a volatile market we've been in the last few years, but you'll need to take a deep dive into that as you optimize your funding scenarios. And then developing plans based on those scenarios or the scenario that you choose. And then once again, documenting those impacts of the plans, and then you're kind of starting back over again. So moving on to the network analysis and goals portion of that. you should perform a network analysis annually. And then that's where you can set and adjust your program goals based on how are you doing, and what kind of funding you have that year. If you have some one-time funding, maybe you decide to bump up a goal for that coming year or what have you. That you have that opportunity, but to do that on an annual basis, to look at whatever scenario you're faced with that year. Like I said, to get there, you got to update the inventory, update the payment condition ratings. This is one, your roads that you didn't touch, they've aged another year, so the condition of those roads has deteriorated in that 1 year. Same thing, like I said, on the impacts of the improvement plans that you had made. And then, once you have those updates done, you can count how many failed roads do you have in your networks? Did you decrease that from the year before? How many roads are good or better? Those are metrics that you can measure. What is your overall network condition index? Is it, on a scale of 0 to 100, if you're 70 and above, you've got a good program that's doing well. And that's the opportunity there to review and adjust those goals. And working with Brian, we came up with the goals that are listed there for both the Beaufort County maintained roads as well as all roads within Beaufort County. I kind of separating those two out, and based on what we've seen with our current conditions within the county and then within the county's maintained road system. And so you see the first one is to reduce the backlog of failed roads to 0 miles within 5 years. We've got a small amount of failed roads to maybe no failed roads in the Beaufort County system. So maintaining it at 0 is good. 90% of the network. These numbers are kind of on the extreme end of these ranges because the system is in good condition.
I think we're at 75%.
So a goal of 90% of your network being good or better within 5 years is, for most counties and agencies, probably is a very lofty goal. But you guys are have that in your sights, which is great. Overall network payment condition of 80 or greater within 5 years. So yeah, on that 0 to 100 scale, and then meet a payment preservation funding goal of 50%. So kind of building your way to that of maintaining your good roads in a good condition so they never reach that point of failure and they never make the bad list of that backlog of failed roads. And then looking at the overall county system, reducing that to 7.5 miles or less within 5 years of failed roads. Improving the network PCI for each municipality to a 70 or greater. So kind of pulling those apart there in each municipalities and bringing those up. Overall network condition index of 75 or greater for the overall countywide program. And then having 75% of the network in a good or better condition within 5 years. Those are the goals that we put in here. Obviously, like Brian said, this is the living document, so those things will be looked at on an annual basis and adjusted as needed. So kind of the next steps in the process would be looking at your budget on an annual basis. And you see I've got kind of the funnel there, this kind of the three-pronged approach of preservation, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. And I've got a few scenarios at the bottom of the slide, but it's really completing an analysis to determine what mix of projects that will improve your overall health of your network, and reducing that backlog of failed roads. And you could use those program goals we just discussed to decide how best to utilize those funds. And like I said earlier, keeping good roads in good condition that keeps them out of the red and yellow area and keeps them in the green area, so your number of roads that are in good or better condition continue to stay that way. So a few funding scenarios, and these are just hypothetical, but you could, if you start off with a preservation percentage of your budget using at 20% and reconstruction at the highest, preservation at the lowest, and eventually you want those kind of the shift so that your backlog of your roads to be reconstructed goes away, because what that essentially means is you're spending a small amount of money on a very long list of roads. In reconstruction, you're spending the most of your budget or a large part of your budget on a very small list. So your cost per mile is quite extreme from one to the other. So if you can shift that, you can put more money on more miles on an annual basis. So that's kind of the shift in the thought process there from worst first to a holistic approach of going about maintaining your pavement network. And so the next slide talks a little bit about what, Ms. Kozak, what you were discussing with prioritization. And so there's an example here. I'm not going to dive too deep into this. Is the one we used on the low volume roads. But you're looking at the pavement condition and essentially ADT, and it did have a land use. The land use can, like I said, this kind of it's a living document, so you can adjust this as needed, but the biggest point is you need to have a way to prioritize the road so that you're not just basing it on the pavement condition index, and you're not just picking the worst road and spending all your money on the worst roads, and then that's the worst first way of doing things versus kind of the holistic approach, and then decide what kind of funding, how you want to utilize your funding for the best network health, and then decide how do you prioritize each of those subsets of roads that are within those individual categories. Because you use that database then that you've created to decide, okay, which roads fit within this category, which ones are the highest priorities based on how you've set it. And then you utilize that list, and then you do your field reviews, much like what Brian was talking about. That gives you the opportunity to look at things such as the planning piece. If there's something that's being planned, such as a Walmart or some other large development, maybe you want to delay it a year, or what have you. If there's a land or a dirt mine coming into a location that's going to, on a secondary road that could tear it up, you need to make some considerations for that. Or there's a lot of different things, obviously, that can play a factor in the condition of the road. Trucks being the worst scenario. For a lot of these secondary roads that were never built for that. So grouping roads within the same neighborhood, as long as if they're in similar to same condition, you want to have those grouped together so that essentially, the way I look at it is every time the low boy picks a piece of equipment up and takes it to the next job, you're paying for it. So your cost goes up. So if you can group those roads together, your cost is going to go down. Your cost per mile to pave is going to go down. And also, from a citizen standpoint, you've got it's much better to go in and pave as many as that need to be paved at one time than coming year after year to the same location. So I think from a customer service standpoint, you'll have better results there as well. The priority ranking score, like I said, you can be things such as pavement condition index, land use, as well as traffic. So the last two slides really talk about treatment selection and the decision trees. And so how I'm recommending you go about treatment selection is you utilize that pavement condition index, and you can see kind of the range there on the table to the right, from 0 to 40, very poor, and you're looking at reconstruction at that point up to the darker green and the 85 to 100. So you're looking at preservation treatments there. You understand what the roads and what category they fit within. And then you take the next step. Does the road have curb and gutter? Do you need to mill it or do you not? You may have to mill it just because of the condition, but that's more on the reconstruction side of things, and the decision trees will help you kind of get to that conclusion as well. But the first kind of thought process there, if you're going to pave a road and you have a curb there, you've got to maintain that elevation of that gutter line. And so that'll trigger you to add milling to that particular road. You need to review the distresses and then complete a review, a field review of that road to best determine. We're looking at data that may be 3 years old at that time, so you really need to go out and you need to look at that road and say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and that's where the decision trees. And I've got two that are shown in the next page, and this one's this is the sort of the two extremes, the very poor. In this situation, a very poor road, you're going to mill it because or either you're going to full depth patch it or mill it, full depth patch it and overlay it, or you're going to do a reconstruction, say a full depth reclamation type process. Regardless whether it has curb and gutter or not, you can you can do that. A lot of times in the urban area, you may side toward going with just full depth patching and milling, full depth patching and overlay versus the full depth reclamation. But looking at the density of ruts and the cracking density or grading greater than, say, 20% of the area is cracked up with alligator cracking, or greater than 20% of the rutting. Those things will trigger you to do the patching. Same thing, continue to get less than you can get away with typically a full depth patch, mill, and overlay. So those are kind of the defining factor, is where's your kind of the breaking point in the cost. If you have to full depth patch for 20% of your area, you're better off in the long run to do the full depth reclamation, because the cost is about the same. And then now you're getting a full road that's been reconstructed from 9 inches up, or 8 inches up, or 10 inches up. So you've got a homogeneous mixture of the full width of the road that's been completely redone, and in the long run, it'll be in great condition. Kind of flipping that over to the good road situation. In this situation, you got a road, you're looking at it from a preservation standpoint. Is it rural with no curb and gutter? Is it an urban route? And then it can help you decide which treatments are better utilized in those areas at this point in time. So isolated fatigue cracking, those are things that you may see in low-lying areas where you poor drainage. You may have to do some full depth patching in those isolated areas, but it should be a very small amount of the area. And then you can decide which treatment best fits. You're looking at some type of overlay, whether it's a thin left steel course, microsurfacing, but those are all there within the kind of the blue box as you work your way from left to right based on the questions you ask yourself about that road along the way. The urban roads, whether it's curb or no curb, you can decide which treatment type, which path you go upon there to come up with a final decision. So that's what I've got.
This was basically done to quantify kind of this is what we've been doing, how we've got to where we're at. This is to live in perpetuity, so that how the decisions are made in the past, how they will be continued on in the future using this process. And the other thing that's very relevant is that just brought out with our 5-year plan, we have established the roads that will be paved throughout those 5 years. And by hiring an engineer every year to make certain what we had looked at and what we felt was appropriate to have done to those roads at that given point in time is still in place or should be done. It gives us the opportunity to change, whether it's a pound of asphalt we're putting down or the type of process, whether it's refogging or milling and filling and anything else. So it helps by us annually going through this thought process, and that's why we hire an engineer to look at our 5-year plan, continue to look at it.
Can we get this electronically, because it's rather small print, and
Yes.
be able to make it a little
Yep.
bigger?
You got a copy.
We have copies.
Well, I have a
And-
hard copy, but it's hard to read it on the hard copy, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Item C, Beaufort County Transportation Plan. We wrote our first plan back in 2017. And it is a requirement that we provide a transportation plan to the SCDOT January of every year. And through the years, we've done a great job of making minor changes and everything to it. But I'd like to put a committee together that is going to stand back, not necessarily looking at it from the planning standpoint, but looking at it from the execution standpoint. And of the words, because we've changed some of our programs. We now have a 5-year program for 500 ADT in this. We're going to be talking in a minute about having a program, another 5-year program for 500 to 2,000 ADT. So with that in mind, I'm going to appoint my vice chair and Jenny, and we can meet at a separate time to have a little bit further conversation. But I'm going to ask you we don't have to have it done till probably about October time span. So it gives us some time to look at it and go through our transportation plan and have it ready for our meeting in November, so it can be approved and sent to Secretary of Transportation by 1 January. So I see heads nodding. Nobody's disagreeing with that?
two of us?
Yep, just two. Any more, it just makes it harder to get a group together. Two can do it,
And if we can't get along with each other, we'll
let me know.
Can you stay after the meeting a bit for a quick organization?
yeah, well, actually, today is the one time I have someone who's to be at 5:30.
I'll get your phone number. I'll call you.
Yeah,
Okay, the next item is request for proposal, 500 to 2,000 ADT.
Thank you, Chairman Gordon. And so as you mentioned a minute ago, at the last meeting, it was discussed to do a 5-year plan for 500 to 2,000 ADT roads for the DOT. So can't really see a lot of it here, but basically, out of the 380 miles that the DOT owns and secondary roads that the DOT owns and maintains in the county, about 102 of those miles are between the ADT of 500 and 2,000. We're using a budget of about 500,000 to look at this. So we have the scope here that we've pulled up. I'll pass it out and then we'll go through it real quick and discuss.
So less than the 500
And when you look at that, I think we had, how many miles of 500 or less? I think it was around 100 miles.
About the same, it's pretty
Yeah, so roughly 200 miles out of 380 miles of roads fall in the 2,000 ADT or less, and 180 fall into 2,000 and above ADT.
All right, so before jump into this, do want to thank Richard. He did a great job with this, and he's done a great job, him and his team, with the last ADT, low volume ADT preservation. And this is going to be very similar to what was done previously that Richard presented on last year about the report and 5-year plan that they came up with for the low volume, less than 500 ADT roads. So basically, we have received data from the DOT, from Chad Rawls, who spoke at the last meeting. And this is updated data, I believe collected within the last year or two, of all the secondary roads in the county. And he has gone through and split that out for roads between the ADTs of 500 and 2,000 and presented that to us. So we will give to the selected consultant, that data will go to them. They will review it, look at the PQIs and the distresses that are occurring on these roads, and evaluate all the roads, and take that data, come up with a ranking criteria, probably similar to what was used on the last one and what's in this manual, and then come up with a 5-year plan for treatment options using that 500,000 a year. And that will be an additional 5-year plan that will be presented annually with our current 5-year county road plan and 5-year low ADT road plan. We've also included in this that they will, going back to the annual review, they will look at the next couple years of county projects for year 8 and year 8 county roads and year 3 of the SCD low volume roads, and reevaluate those, come up with new price estimates, our engineers' estimates, and quantities for bid. So that will be included as part of that as well. I'm hoping that once we get this, since the data is already present, it should be pretty simple. I'm hoping for a 3-month turnaround so that we can turn this around and get bids out near the beginning of the fiscal year. So that is basically what the scope is going to look like. I guess, are there any questions about that?
We're good. Thank you much.
Okay, well then I will get this out to bid. Thank you.
Mr. Backer, you're up next. Our treasurer's report.
This is the snapshot of where we stand, really through January. That's what's showing in terms of our revenues. Just as a little bit of a refresher, we're expecting recurring revenues for the year to be about $2,661,000. Donor bonus of $708,000 roughly. And our portion of a non-recurring appropriation of $20 million is about $462,000, which kind of brings our funding to about 3.8 million for what we're expecting for the year. In terms of the spending, expenditures, it isn't quite fully updated. Brian did mention during his presentation, and also Rusty, the contracts for year 7 projects. Right now, only 700,000 of that 4.9 million is shown on the spreadsheet right now. We need to get the spreadsheet updated as those contracts, still outstanding contracts, are turned into purchase orders, so we can reflect that.
Can we,
And then
can we get
better-
that done
Once they
within?
become purchase orders, it will be updated.
Okay.
As of right now,
About a
they're
week?
not purchase orders, so once they become purchase orders and they go into the system, they'll be updated.
Okay.
And then that'll give us a very much clearer picture of where we stand now versus where we need to be by June 30th to meet our C-Fund program expenditure requirements.
Questions?
So that's, the plan is, as we just discussed, get things updated, especially with the significant amount of spending that's kind of out under contract but not reflected in purchase orders yet. And get a clearer picture of where we are and what we may need to do to meet the commitment.
Okay. Is there, item 8 is public comment. Is there anybody here who has a public comment that would like to make? Seeing none. Item 9. I just have one item that I think I've mentioned to you before. We moved this meeting because I've been asked to make a presentation at the state CTC meeting. I also am going to wind up on a board in the afternoon and talking about trends and things that are happening. And it was kind of interesting. Chad put together, I'm from Beaufort County. There'll be a person from Anderson that's on the committee, and there'll be a person from Denmark. So they've covered the state with people sitting on the committee presentation portion of it. So we'll see how that all turns out in the afternoon. And I've thought about it, and I'd be glad to make my presentation to this committee at our next meeting if you would so desire. So it would not be a problem in any way, shape, or form. So I'm seeing heads shake, so I'd be glad to do that. And as I've said, my presentation isn't going to be, when you go to these, so often they turn into lectures and things of that nature. Mine's going to be, I'm going to tell a story, and I'm going to go back to how this all started in 2016 and kind of tell the story of our successes and hurdles that we've been through over that period of time. Okay, we ran a little over today, and I see no other business to come before us. We're adjourned.